The ABCs of horror.
Welcome to the HellBound Horror Show. We don't necessarily need to scour through cereal boxes to find X-ray goggles anymore. No, we can find X-ray vision right here in the Necronomicon. (1963's) X, the man with X-ray eyes. X, the man with X-ray eyes, is also referred to as just X, and was made and directed by Roger Corman. If you don't know who Roger Corman is, shame on you. Roger Corman is the king of schlock cinema. He is super famous or infamous depending on who you ask, and he is known for making and producing films at lightning speed on a shoestring budget. This guy has directed 56 movies, but that's nothing compared to the 415 that he produced. And yes, they are cheaply made B movies, but he somehow gets massive unknown talents behind his films. He's found many legends of the film industry, such as Jack Nicholson, Francis Ford Coppola, Robert De Niro, James Cameron, and tons more. Roger Corman once made an Edgar Allan Poe movie with Jack Nicholson and Boris Karloff. Production wrapped early, but instead of just saying, "That's a wrap," Corman knew he had Karloff for another day or two of shooting, so he decided to make a completely new movie. He didn't know what it would be about, but he filmed some stuff with Karloff and filled in the gaps later. The movie turned out to be The Terror, which is a terrible movie, but it just shows how efficient Roger Corman was and knew how to squeeze out every penny. So let's get back to X. It seems to be a pretty debated film. Many just dismiss it as trash, and others view it as one of Roger Corman's best films. It's a 6.7 on IMDb and an 88% fresh on Rotten Tomatoes, which isn't bad at all for a Roger Corman film that's almost completely forgotten. X starts with Dr. Xavier, who is a scientist working on improving eyesight to be able to see X-rays, and he labels his new drug X. How original. He claims that humans can only see about 10% of the known light wave spectrum, and his experiments will do wonders for the fields of medicine. He tests on monkeys, but seriously, he didn't even get it in that monkey's eye. It just landed on his cheek. Come on, Dr. Xavier. Stop monkeying around. The monkey is conditioned to press a switch when it sees a certain color, but the monkey ends up pressing all of the switches, even though only one color is visible to us. This must mean that the monkey is able to see through all of the sheets. This is a great discovery, but the monkey dies right away. That's not good. Xavier can't take it anymore. Even though the monkey just died, he needs to try the experiment for himself. The film could have easily just cheesed out and not shown us Xavier's point of view, but instead just have Xavier describe what he sees. Roger Corman may be cheap, but he also makes an entertaining film. The point of view shot is pretty bad by today's standards, but for 1963, this was pretty far out. Even though the experiment works and Xavier can see through certain things, his funders decide to pull out all of their money on his research. This bums him out, but nothing a little dancing can't help, especially when everyone appears to be naked. Wait a second. I get that this is a really cool shot and actually a very humorous moment in the movie. However, these people should be wearing shoes. Yes, I know that the shoes would be invisible. Sure, that makes sense. But their feet should not be physically touching the ground, especially for ladies in high heels. I don't know why, but this just took me out of the movie. As you can guess, things start to happen that lead to a death and some tense situations. Xavier continues taking the eye drops, and it makes him a very interesting character. I don't know if he's addicted to the drops like a drug, or if he's addicted to finding the truth. I honestly thought he was going to become a villain.
I'll order the bandages removed tomorrow.
Bandages? Oh, yes. I hardly noticed them. Hardly noticed them at all.
But he stays as a fairly sympathetic character. There are times that he may erupt, but I don't know if it's because of the drop specifically or just because that's who he is. He is definitely strained, and I think anyone would be in that situation. He can't close his eyes because he can see through his eyelids. He is constantly seeing light. He can't escape it, and it's not always clear. It's a rather interesting story, and it's fairly well written. There's a scene where they are driving through the city, and he's describing what he sees. He can make out the buildings and some wires, and describes it as a city unborn, rising into the sky with fingers of metal, limbs without flesh. It's beautiful and tragic. As I was watching this film, I got scared that it wouldn't be considered a horror film. So I went online to double check, and IMDb and Rotten Tomatoes and all these other sites listed it as horror and sci-fi. The more I think about it, the more I get it. Xavier is going through some horrific things, and not to mention that his transformation would be horrifying as well. The film can get very grim, and when it wants to shock you, it will shock you. The ending is fantastic. Xavier has gone mad, and he's describing what he actually sees. He describes the darkness farther than time, and beyond the darkness there is a glowing light, and in the center of the universe is an eye that sees all. Holy cow, that is some Lovecraftian imagery. I was sitting on the edge of my seat wanting more, and then, all of a sudden, the movie ends abruptly with a shockingly thought-provoking ending that I'm not gonna spoil here. The ending could be viewed as comical today because it comes so abruptly and it's so shocking. It's a little cheesy by today's standards, but there's something horrifying about it, especially if you stop and think about it. All in all, X, the Man with X-Ray Eyes, is a decent film. It may not hold up super well, but I respect it for what it was during the time it came out. I could see how it may have influenced others, and it may be worth a watch if you're in the mood for some early 60s schlock that actually isn't too bad. Also, this came into my head. It's a little food for thought, if you will. X, the Man with X-Ray Eyes, was initially released in Italy in July of 1963. X-Men, the comic book, was first issued in September of 1963. Both have someone with superhuman powers, and both have a Dr. Xavier. Is there a connection? Is this a conspiracy? You decide. Or don't, I don't care.